You want to go with full screen mode?
Okay, hold on. Seeing it?
Yes, we are able to see the screen now, Ranjit. Ranjit would request you to please turn on your video as well. That would help.
Okay, just you need to help me out in this.
Should I prompt? Okay, let me prompt you just a minute. You'll get a pop-up stating that to start your video.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, we're able to see.
Cool. And how do I now minimize this? All right.
Just go for the full screen.
For some reason, my mouse is not responding.
Let me assist you. You are on your screen. Would request go for a full screen or F5, or you can use any tabs like slideshow. Is
Yeah,
that an error?
I realized that. I just realized my mouse is not working.
Okay. Okay.
All right, there it is.
Yes, we are able to see the screen, and we start the timer now. Over to you.
Okay, thanks all. Thanks to the panel. Thank you for this opportunity in presenting this innovation. Before we start on this, I just want to give a quick context on how we came to this idea in the first place, and then that would sort of help you to also understand some of the journeys that we have been through. So as Grep Digital, we take up digital transformation projects, end-to-end technology modernization, and so on. And as part of this, we had actually done a project for one of India's largest early stage venture companies to modernize their tech platform. And many of the observations and things that we had during this project actually gave the impetus to actually see whether there are better ways of doing things. And that's a context in which this innovation came up. In this, I also would like to highlight that beyond just Grep, we have been assisted in this by academia. So this, you could call it some kind of a industry academia collaboration as well. And I'd like to thank all of them as well in this, though they are not present in this, this presentation. Okay, with that, quickly moving on, just to set context that this is the innovation title itself is says, it's a digital ledger web 3 blueprint for an alternative investment fund exchange. So what this is about, we'll cover in the rest of these slides. But essentially what we are trying to do is to increase the liquidity and participations in AIF markets, and how we are going about that and why we should really do it and what are the market potentials is what will be covered in the rest of the presentation. Okay, so just a quick overview of AIF products. Why is it important? And we didn't really realize how important it was until we did the project that I mentioned. So after that, we have been quite curious of how this market is shaping up and so on and so forth. So over the last 2-3 years that we have observed that the interest is just growing and growing. And I think that's to do with, the way that many of these financial instruments can be reorganized and distributed, and several other use cases keep coming about. Some of the most often ones that we have used, other than the normal ones like shares and REIT, people are well informed about it. But beyond that, we have seen interest in rentals, lease, invoice discounting, floor area ratio trading. Actually, FIR trading was actually quite a eye opener for us, because that requirement came to us from a government, quasi-government entity. So we observed that these kind of trading, AF trading, is also applicable for these kind of instruments. So then we we knew that that there is some kind of a potential here and continue to work on this innovation. The problem statement per se can be well understood if we observe, how these instruments are really constructed, right? So it is usually composite in nature. Um, there are, pool of funds that are created with, a lead investor or some kind of a family office or a trust. And then that lead investor actually invests in this AF instrument on behalf of the others. There are several rules that go into it, and primary among them would be a lock-in period, usually between 3 to 5 years, and this cycle is usually managed by a AF fund manager. But in this whole cycle, I think though we saw there are many pain points for the investee and for the investors, we focused on this pain point, which is the low liquidity, which kept coming up in many of our conversations during the work that we were doing. And these liquidity problems will typically not be highlighted by the lead investor. It will be highlighted by the participants into the lead investor. In some cases, yes, the lead investor also used to have those pain points, but the participants, it was really, really, bad kind of a pain point. So the reason we took this is that it affects a lot of participants in this network, and the focus of the problem statement is that we're trying to unlock this wealth during the course of this instrument period. So that's the whole focus of this innovation.
Ranjit, a prompt for you. You're close to 5 minutes. A prompt for you.
Okay. So with this, participants lack the ability to enter and exit, and the way we are resolving this is how the rest of the slides go. The market opportunity is huge, and I would like to highlight in terms of why we think it's huge. Goldman Sachs says, there's a lot of mass wealthy, mass affluent kind of population who are coming up in the population of India. And when there is more liquidity and surplus money available, they'll also need to have, more sources of deployment, which directly plays into these kind of AF instruments as well. So the innovation, what is it all about? So this is the current process of executing contracts from an AAF standpoint. It's focused more on primary bulk trading or bulk investment markets. Typical, a lot of paperwork, Excels, so on and so forth. And finally, it's outcome of this whole exercise is some document format which people store for further usage. The blockers for this is this document format is not electronically tradable. It cannot be fractionally, traded as well, and therefore it becomes very time consuming to use this for further purposes. So the whole innovation that we are highlighting here is this conversion of this document format into smart contracts on digital ledger technology, and that's the primary innovation that we are bringing about. So what is it about? So there is a combination of smart contracts, what is known as mirror tables, and digital currency, using which the whole exercise of introducing an instrument and trading in fractional units of that instrument becomes possible. And when we say trading in those fractional units, we keep in mind that the trades are always done within the original contract context, so that the original contract from the point of view of the investee still remains. And more of this keeps happening. The secondary market keeps developing, and then the transparency and so on helps in the further development of these markets. So this is essentially the innovation. Just to highlight this concept of mirror tables and so on was actually one of the first proponents of this was Balaji Srinivasan, who's the CTO of Coinbase, who we were also talking with over email on whether these are really possible and so on. So that's the information also around this. So how do
2 minutes left?
How do we actually do this? There is a sequence diagram that we have put up. One as a lead investor, trustee, company or investee, and then the blockchain digital ledger. And then there is a sequence of operations that go in terms of minting of tokens and then notifications coming up, all of them being recorded on the blockchain. And there is a swap that finally comes in from the trustee standpoint to actually make this possible. So the trustee or the intermediary still remains, but the role is more of an enabler rather than as the aggregator. This solution has been developed, and we have used this in some use cases, though we have not deployed it in real time. And I would skip these slides in the interest of time. And I would go directly to the uniqueness of this. It's primarily in the creation of a composite market, and there are solutions already there like equities and forced capital, but these are actually extending their current PE companies into trading of those PE companies' private shares, and it's not for a larger audience. The market potential, as we can see, is, we did a rough calculation on this. If you see category 1, 2, 3, and the market size of just those categories in March 2023, assuming there is a 5% monthly trade, we come to, 1.86 lakh crores of, rotation of money. And if you take a CAGR of 25% of this market, the current projection is around 36% on the higher side, though we took a 25% conservative estimate. So across 15 years, accumulated it's around 15.33 lakh of potential financial market expansion. The social impact is obvious in terms of, there are secondary markets, then the trust in these kind of instruments increase, and there is, larger access of capital and equitable growth, which we have highlighted here. As part of the conclusion and next steps, we have highlighted, what these benefits could be. We expect that this kind of an adoption path would be there in terms of, how it will actually be used and adopted over a multi-year period. And our ask in this is more in terms of help in taking this forward.
Thank you, Ranjit. Team Grep Digital, your time is up for the presentation. I would request the team leaders, if you could turn on your video. We would like to add you to the Q&A part. Would request you to please turn on your video. Jurors, we start with the Q&A. If the juror would like to go first, Ranjit, you can turn on your video now.
Yes, sir.
Any of the juror would like to go first?
Yeah. Hi, Ranjit. Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. Very clear definition of problem statement and what the product is. I want to understand a couple of things. Is this for category A AIS or category 3 AIS?
Category 1 and 2 is what I think you are referring to, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So more startups and things like that, where I may invest in an AI, but I want to trade it. So effectively, I was just going through your website also. So effectively, are you trying to create a blockchain of some sort?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So, okay.
Correct.
And your background is largely in technology architecture, so and that's how you kind of thought through this and conceived it, and
Correct.
or is your background more from kind of prime brokerages in the US where this happens quite frequently? So,
oh no, we are just tech guys, right? We understand the markets. We understand, how tech helps markets.
So you are trying to solve the problem for the small uh, investor who's maybe got 1, 2, 3 crores of investable surplus, where he's putting 10, 20 lakhs in the startup AIS. And then he's stuck there for 10 years because there is no liquidity. So you are digitizing the entire platform so that he can trade it. Is this allowed by SEBI? Will SEBI allow, does SEBI allow this trading of, effectively, what you're doing is you're converting the AIF into units and you're trading the units. Right?
Exactly.
So does SEBI allow you to trade this?
Yeah, it does. And just to also highlight, it is not specific only to private equity. It could also be for land, for example, FAR ratios and, all kinds of invoice discounting, etc., etc. But SEBI does. I don't think SEBI covers this. SEBI basically covers it from the lead investor standpoint, and that contract needs to be is what SEBI really covers. The participants themselves can keep moving inside the lead investor.
So you're saying basically this is an application that you developed not just for AIF. AIF is just an example.
Right.
But if there is a land parcel where we are 100 owners,
Yeah.
I can trade my piece, and
Yeah.
all the documentation and all is digitized.
Correct.
So there is no, but then you'll have to tie up with the land records and this at the
Correct.
district level. So there is
Correct.
some amount of regulatory approval, regulatory tie-ups that are needed at the back end.
Right.
But having said that, what you have done is you've really created solution. This is a solution. Okay, yeah, very good.
Yeah. We are solution
Good,
architects. So,
good.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. It's not easy to do what you've done, by the way. It's very difficult.
Yes, sir. We
Thank
have
you.
How
had
long
a
did
lot of
you?
help.
How long did you take? Did it take to build this?
See, to understand the problem, it took us nearly around 6, 7 months, and building it took us another 6, 7 months. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your question. Pranav, sir, before you ask question, can I take Professor Ranjit first? Thank you, sir. Ma'am, you can ask your question.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a basic, market-driven question. Is your assumption that by making the product, by making the solving the liquidity problem by using technology, do you think it will change the underlying risk element, or will it make it more attractive for the investor just because now it is more digitized, more transparent?
That's good. Actually, we debated that actually a lot. So I'm not saying my answer is right, but this is what we thought. What
No,
we
I
thought
concede
is,
that it
yeah.
is easier to ask this, but
Yeah. See, what the thought process we went through was, okay, so why would somebody invest in, let's say, a Tata IPO, right? They will invest in a Tata IPO if, because there is a history of Tata stocks being traded well in the secondary market, and therefore you think that there's going to be something. So in other words, secondary trading, we are assuming will build trust in these instruments, because there is a secondary way that somebody is willing to put in money even after the first primary investor, and who is not really a a lead investor kind of a when VC kind of people. There are other participants who are really buying into this, and therefore the interest would come up, and it also sort of de-risks that person that if he wants to exit, he can exit it also.
he will exit if he finds a counterparty, no?
Correct. Correct. So that is a assumption in this. So even in stock market, I got stuck with Paytm stocks recently, right? So
Uh,
so we are all stuck with those kind of issues.
so
But yeah, but
Paytm is still on the secondary market and on a more, let's say, more commoditized, but this is less commoditized. So that underlying problem is going to continue, right? With or without
underlying problem,
technology.
if the asset is completely worthless, I for example hold Pentafor stocks which I bought in 1999 something. So I hold a lot of Pentafor stock. Nobody's willing to buy it.
No, so to make it quick, I just want to know how your solution addresses this problem.
That's what. So the assumption is that it can be traded. Right now there is no
So
means to
that is
trade.
the underlying assumption.
Huh. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Pranav, sir, your question.
Thanks for the presentation. I definitely think it's a massive problem statement, and attempting to solve it also leveraging blockchain seems like a very, very smart project. My question is a little bit, maybe just building on the previous one, because important. So the need is very compelling from a seller perspective who need liquidity. That need is extremely, extremely compelling. But from the person who will buy from the seller, the AIF buyer, which is the counterparty, I imagine, what is the go-to market on that piece? Because in my experience, the big issue there is information asymmetry. There's also regulatory piece which was asked. That's very critical. But assume regulators are all fine, etc. In stock market, there's a huge thing about information symmetry that SEBI at least tries to enforce. In AIFs and startup land and private equity land, it's just a big black box. Even the FMVs people produce is a big black box, and some people may not want the whole world to know their private information. And even if they provide the private information, from there to valuation is another big jump, right? So it's actually a slightly complicated buy for a buyer, and that is why currently it's an institutionalized space where it's a very complex process to do secondaries. And so how does that will play out? Because you will need that. I mean, the capital needs to be attracted for this whole thing to work. But it is still nevertheless a fantastic sort of thing to at least create this, that something can consider buying.
Yeah, so you're right. And what we observed in that from that perspective of investee, right, that is the company or the person who's actually putting up the asset for sale. Your question is coming more from a private equity standpoint. Again, I'm highlighting that this is not just on private equity, it could be other things, but let's assume the private equity problem. SEBI does mandate that valuations of these companies need to be reported quarterly or some periodic way, right? And these are actually given back to the investors, and the investor does know that, what is the kind of value that his investment currently holds. Is it going up, coming down? And if he thinks that, he has to want to exit, maybe he thinks that this money is better, invested elsewhere. He can then, put up this at that particular price. Now, having the seller putting up the price, now how does the buyer know that this is a fair price, right? So that is the second part of that equation. The second part of that equation, my feeling is that in due course of time, that there will be need for these kind of presentations to be disclosed to whoever is buying also. In the same way that the first time that the investor is investing in, whether it's a lead investor or whoever it is, he's going to go through those financial statements. In the same way, the person who is going to buy this as secondary trade also will need to see those statements, and that can be published on the blockchain before the actual the transaction happens. That's our thought.
Understood. I'll just briefly say that what you may need is some sort of lead investor on the buying side also to catalyze it. Somebody who takes the charge, because it's a fund, right? AIF may have 6 or 7 or 8 portfolio companies or something like that, just as an example. Anyway, I'll stop here.
Right.
Thank you to the jurors for your questions, and team Grep Digital. Thank you.